Hi everyone, welcome back to Talent Order's Breakfast Briefing, Friday 24th of April 2020. The theme this week will be the difficulties within the cybersecurity market given the current climate. Today I'm joined by Vicki Gavin, who is a cybersecurity specialist currently working at Cyber Rescue Alliance. Vicki, thank you so much for joining me today. Before I ask you any questions, can you give our audience a little bit of background on your career history and why I may be asking you these questions?
I'm sure, happy to, Amy. So I am currently the cyber coach at the Cyber Rescue Alliance, and in that capacity am providing coaching to a number of industry leaders on how to prepare for and respond to the current pandemic. Included in that, most recently, I was invited by the International Monetary Fund to provide advice to senior leaders at banks globally on how to prepare for and respond to the current pandemic. I have over 20 years experience leading teams, delivering information security and business continuity, and have been fortunate enough, and that's an odd way to describe it, to respond to well in excess of 1,000 crises.
Amazing. Did you say 1,000 crises?
Yes. Yeah, these are ones that require intervention over business as usual.
Amazing. I think that's quite something. 1,000 is a lot. So thank you for that. That's really, really helpful. My first question then really is, have you seen any changes within the cybersecurity market since the country has been in lockdown? And if so, what?
Well, I think everybody has identified that cybersecurity has become considerably more important through this crisis. The world is becoming more and more digital every day. And I think this crisis will drive us even further in that direction. And as a result, cybersecurity is going to become more important. On the downside, I've got to say the number of vendors who have sent me emails explaining to me how their product was going to save the world and my life if I would just buy it and implement it. Now, I appreciate they've got a job to do, but any technical professional worth their salt knows that change equals disruption. And right now, during a crisis, is not the time to be making technology changes. You only make those if it's absolutely necessary to the life of your business. And while there may be some security technologies that need to be implemented, I cannot believe that it's anywhere near the number of approaches that I've been getting. So I'm a little bit worried that perhaps our vendors don't appreciate what their role in this crisis really ought to be, which I think should be much more supportive. I think otherwise, at least the professionals that I've been in contact with, everybody's doing just the best that they can. No one has ever faced anything like this. It doesn't matter if you lived through 9/11, Y2K, avian flu, swine flu, it really makes no difference. This crisis is completely different. And one of the reasons it is so different is because that recovery period is likely to go on for anywhere from a few months to several years. I have heard a number of experts predicting that we can look at living with rotating lockdowns, a long-term need for social distancing for at least the next 3 years. And as long as the virus is around and we don't have a vaccine and we don't have an effective treatment, That's likely to be true. So, take your own best guess at how long it's likely to be. But this is the new normal for the foreseeable future. And cybersecurity is going to be key to maintaining our ability to do business in this environment.
Absolutely. I can't believe that 3 years. I knew it was going to be a long time. I think, people are hoping for the best and thinking, yeah, a few months. I think a few months will be extremely optimistic. But 3 years, wow, that's really something to think about, isn't it? I think we all need to do our part and, try and make this as short as possible. If we all, do our part, hopefully it'll be less than 3 years. That's quite something. 3 years without a holiday. I know that's not the right thing to think, but come on.
Don't get me wrong.
Thank you. So what do you think?
I was saying, don't get me wrong. I don't think the current total lockdown will go on for 3 years. As I say, I think we'll be moving in and out of varying degrees of lockdown over those 3 years. So I think life will get much more normal, but it's not going to go back to how it was last year.
Yeah. It's going to be kind of phases, isn't it, really? Stages of reducing the lockdown, potentially. Okay, fine. So thank you for that. What do you think the main challenges for cybersecurity have been since the start of the pandemic?
So I think there are sort of 3 key challenges. I mentioned before, one of the key strategies that we've employed to deal with this particular crisis is working from home. And this has effectively made our attack surface as an industry body, sort of all industries combined together, hundreds, if not thousands of times larger. Because every single person who's dialed into work becomes part of the attack surface.
Yeah.
The cyber criminals didn't take a rest before this incident, and they're confined to home too. And they're going to be just as busy filling their time looking at new ways to try and dupe people so that they can earn their keep, if you will. I mean, for them, crime is their business. They treat it much the same way that we manage and run our legitimate businesses. And this is a golden opportunity for them. And as I mentioned before, technology change. I mean, this is likely to go on for a very, very long time. You can't make 0 changes. You're going to have to make changes, and we are going to have to get a lot more careful about making sure that those changes don't introduce new security challenges into our environments and or security breaches or vulnerabilities, because change equals disruption, and we've just got to be so much slicker at making sure we don't fall into those traps.
Absolutely. And I think from my perspective, I think there are a lot more people kind of doing online banking. I'm doing a lot more of online shopping out of probably boredom, and some people have never used things like online banking before, so very easily could be duped. I've worked in the banking industry. I know that there are those vulnerable customers who will be too scared to go to the bank and think, okay, I'm going to try this, and very easily could, have some cyber attack on them and potentially not even realize. So I think, it's gonna be very disruptive for many different reasons. It's
before we go on, if I can just add to that, I mean, that's here in the UK, where we are relatively advanced in terms of adoption of technology. But places like Africa and India, and parts of China, for that matter, lots of other places around the globe, are not nearly as technologically advanced. So that multiplies that problem, because often those very countries are embedded in our supply chains. And so if we get an increase of cybercrime activity out in those emerging regions, if you will, it's just going to mean more problems for us. I mean, it is very short-sighted to think that, oh, I'm in the UK, I don't have to worry about what's happening in other countries. But we have global supply chain. You have to be aware of who's being impacted and how today, and it changes every day.
Absolutely. I think being as aware as possible helps, but I think, you know, it's going to be difficult no matter what. It's just being really trying to be really careful, I think. Okay, so this kind of moves on to my next question. What can companies and individuals do to ensure that they stay safe from hackers, particularly whilst working from home?
So I don't think I am best placed to answer that question. That there are others who are far better at truly enumerating all of those things. My personal favorite is the Center for Internet Security, who have recently published an excellent paper on all of the things that you need to do to increase your security in response to this crisis, and links to detail on exactly how to do that. So I'm going to share at a very high level the kinds of things that they're talking about, because I can't do better than they can. I mean, they've got hundreds working on this. So, I mean, you know, one of the key things that needs to be addressed is the attack surface. You know, you've got to make sure that as this increasing number of attacks is happening, that your users, your staff, your employees are able to respond to them. And that means we've got to stop training people. We train dogs. Yeah, when you see X, do Y. That doesn't work for cyber. We need to educate. The difference is that when you educate somebody, when they see a new and different situation, they are able to actually assess it and make a sensible judgment call about whether or not that new situation might also be dangerous. If we don't start educating people instead of just training them on how to respond to yesterday's attacks, we are never going to get in front of it.
No.
So, I mean, that's one of the things that needs to happen. And, you know, the Center for Internet Security goes into all the different ways that attackers have been doing it. And it is worth making sure that your current training covers those things. But you've really got to start thinking about how you're going to move from that training to educating mindset.
Yeah.
You know, the network is bigger now. The network now includes all of your employees. So you've got to make sure that they know how to secure their networks and their devices. And that's not something that we've put as much effort into on a corporate level as is going to be necessary going forward. Because, you know, quite frankly, securing your home network and personal computer is not simple. This is not something that just happens out of the box. And not everybody has spent 20 plus years learning all about cybersecurity so that they can read the information and make the right choices. So organizations really need to think about how they're going to help their people be in a position to make the right choices, and or how they improve their own security monitoring to extend out to that wider network. There are ways it can be done. There are suppliers who offer tools that can help you do that. Each organization is going to have to make its own choices. But ultimately, you've got to start thinking about that extended network as your network. Video conferencing. I have seen all sorts of really, really dodgy video conferencing habits.
Really? What are they? I'm thinking about me.
The dodgiest is reusing a conference ID and password. I mean, it sounds silly, but there are a large number of people, and people who should know better, who can't be bothered going through the hassle of setting up a new conference every time they want to talk to person X. They just use an old one.
I didn't think you could even do that.
Now I'm giving away the secrets. Yes, you can do that. But it's a really, really bad thing to do. It's just as bad as reusing a user ID and password on anything else. It's one thing when you're providing a public service like this. I mean, if extra people get the user ID and password to this and hear a broadcast before it goes live, it's not a big security. But if you were of a bank having a discussion about how we're going to manage through this, reusing an old user ID and password that a criminal was also using to listen to what we were saying, what could happen? It's, video conferencing, it has security measures that must be used. Again, I'm not the expert. I highly recommend the Center for Internet Security. They have done a brilliant paper, and it includes links through to detailed information on how to implement controls. Far more than I can ever do.
On the link, and I'll put it down the bottom for everyone. So if anyone is interested to read more about that, I will have a look. If I find it, I'll put it down the bottom. Yeah, that's lovely though. Thank you. Perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you ever so much. My last question for you is, how do you feel the cybersecurity landscape will change post-COVID-19, whenever that is?
So we've talked about this a little, and I think it summarizes the things that I've said. First and foremost, we're moving into a new reality. And it's not for a day or two or a week or two. This is for months, if not years. So we do have to change the way we're thinking about this. We have to assume that our network, it goes beyond the corporate firewall. It now is out in the community. And every single person who's connected to our network is part of that network. We're going to need to maintain social distancing for quite some time. That means looking at work strategies. Things like working from home need to be part of that. But you're not going to want to have everybody always working from home for several years. So you're going to need to think about, well, how are you going to have people sometimes in the office and sometimes not? And how do you maintain social distance in the office? The simplest, and I'm not saying this is going to work for everybody, but the simplest is, split your workforce into 3 cohorts and have each cohort come into the office for a week and then work from home for 2 weeks. Automatically means everybody who's out and about and less socially distant then stays at home for 2 weeks, self-isolates to a degree, or at least isolates from the rest of your team. There are thousands of other possibilities. There is no right way or wrong way to do this. Each organization will need to work out what's going to work best for them and still allow them to maintain an appropriate social distance between employees. Don't expect any of today's threats to reduce.
Yeah.
The cyber criminals are not taking a holiday. They are working harder than ever to try and steal our money and our data. So we need to be vigilant. And that means back to basics and really making sure that you have got all of the right controls in place to protect, detect, and respond to cybercrime. And I think more important than anything else, educate, educate, educate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Vicki. I really, really do appreciate all of your insights, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today, and I'm sure our viewers will find it really, really helpful. Again, if anyone has any further questions for Vicki or any ideas for themes you'd like to hear about next, please email me on amy.morris@talentorder.com or message me on LinkedIn. If you missed last week's breakfast briefing with Mustafa Khanbai, I will leave the link down below. I hope you're all safe and well. See you next week. Bye.